welcome to your deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at how airbrush artists figure out their pricing.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, we've got a ton of sources, interviews, we've got articles, and even like a Q&A from an industry forum.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
That's cool.
So
Yeah, I'm excited.
it's interesting because a lot of these sources kind of highlight that there are like two distinct paths that airbrush artists can go down.
Oh, really?
Like,
Yeah, okay.
so there's the, doing services at events, and then there's selling pieces in more like a retail setting.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, are you the caterer for the big event, or are you the person at the craft fair with the booth?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and, that impacts how artists think about their pricing.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So, one source was talking about how it's really important to know your costs, especially if you're doing events,
Okay.
which I feel like that's obvious.
Yeah.
But it's like, how much are your materials? How much is travel? And, are you going to have to hire an assistant?
Right.
All that kind of stuff.
You got it. And it's not just about knowing your costs. It's about breaking it down so that you understand your hourly cost.
Oh, okay.
So, think about how many, shirts or hats you could paint in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you can airbrush like 30 hats in an hour.
Okay.
And your total hourly costs with your materials and travel and all that come to $50.
Okay.
Well, your base price per hat would be like $1.67.
Oh, so you're kind of creating like a pricing floor
Yeah,
to make sure that you're...
absolutely. You're
roughly-
covering your expenses.
Okay.
But then you have to factor in, setup time,
Right.
the difficulty of the designs.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, your profit.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You're going to make money.
Yeah.
So, I hadn't really thought about that. Like, setup time can really eat into that
It can.
if you're not careful.
It can. So events are all about understanding your costs and, and building from there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about retail, it seems like it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's not so much about the hard costs. It seems like it's more about what one of the sources called perceived value.
Okay, so perceived value.
Yeah.
This is a key concept in retail.
Yeah, what is that?
Well, it's about what customers are willing to pay for.
Okay.
Items that they're getting customized.
Okay. I'm intrigued by this concept of perceived value.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about it this way.
Okay.
Would you pay the same for a mass-produced T-shirt you'd buy at, like, Target
Right.
as you would for a hand-painted one at, like, a craft fair or something?
I mean, probably not.
Right.
Yeah. I'd pay more for the hand-painted one because it feels special.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the clean cheese strategy comes
The
in.
clean cheese.
Yeah, have you heard that term before?
I've heard it a few times now, and I'm not totally sure what it means.
Okay, so clean cheese, it's about focusing on designs that you can execute quickly,
Okay.
but that are still like really visually appealing.
Oh, so you're maximizing your output, but you're not sacrificing quality.
Exactly.
Got it.
So like one artist we read about said that he tries to do designs that he can do in about 20 to 30 minutes, and he charges between 20 and $30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah, it's accessible,
Yeah.
but it's still unique and custom.
So it's that sweet spot between speed, quality, and profitability.
Exactly.
It is. So I'm starting to see like how you really have to think about your pricing differently if you're doing an event versus retail.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a totally different mindset.
Events are more like you're negotiating a fair price based on your hourly rate.
Yep.
And retail is finding that balance between what people think it's worth and how quickly you can actually make it.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we have this Q&A from this industry forum,
Uh-huh.
and these artists were talking about different pricing scenarios.
Oh, interesting.
And one that I thought was interesting was,
Okay.
how do you price a gig where you've got 1 hour to airbrush 15 hats?
Okay.
Like, how do you even begin to figure that out?
Yeah. So that's where that hourly rate we talked about earlier is important.
Okay.
So in this situation, the artist likes to charge by the hour rather than per hat.
Okay.
So they think about how fast they usually work. So they say they can do like 30 or 35 hats an hour.
Mm.
Then they factor in their travel expenses, and then they calculate like the total price for the gig.
Oh, so it's like a little mini negotiation for each event.
Yeah,
Like, you got to balance what they want with your costs with how much time you have.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all
Oh.
approach to pricing.
Yeah, every artist is different. Every
Yep.
market's different. Every situation's different.
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that came up a couple times was this idea of starting with lower prices when you're first starting out to build your experience and your client base.
Okay.
which seems like it could be good or bad.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It is.
Yeah, if you're just starting out, you kind of,
You need to get clients.
yeah, get your name out there, get some experience. But then are you undervaluing yourself and then you get stuck at that lower price point?
Right. That's a good question.
Yeah, like how do you,
That's a valid concern.
yeah, how do you
Yeah.
navigate that?
Yeah. Well, one strategy is to just be transparent with your clients
Okay.
and say, hey, as I get more experience and I get better at this, my prices are going to go up.
Oh, okay. So you're setting that expectation from the beginning
Right.
and they know that it's coming.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's smart.
Yeah. And it's easier to raise prices gradually than it is to try to do it all at once.
That makes sense. Wow. So we've covered a lot. Like we've talked about, calculating costs and how to think about perceived value. And like I'm starting to see how this is so much more than just, slapping a number on something you made.
It is.
It's a whole process.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complex puzzle
It is.
with lots of moving parts.
Okay. And speaking of moving parts, another thing that we saw a lot was this idea of scaling your business.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do you go from just you to like, a whole team?
That's when things get really interesting,
Yeah.
when you want to grow your business beyond just you.
Yeah.
So the sources had some good advice about streamlining your operations
Okay.
as you grow.
Like what kind of advice?
Well, one artist even talked about investing in technology, like a CRM system.
A what?
A CRM.
What's that?
So CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management.
Okay.
And basically, it's a system that manages all your client information,
Okay.
like tracks their orders, their appointments, and you can even use it to send marketing emails and stuff.
Oh, so it's like taking a lot of that administrative work
Exactly.
off your plate.
So you can focus on making art.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're building a support system for your business.
Yeah.
So that you can
Exactly.
spend more time being creative.
You got it.
Okay. So CRM.
Yeah.
Got it.
And another strategy that came up was hiring assistants.
Assistance.
Yeah.
Okay. So that seems like kind of a big step
It can be.
if you're used to working solo.
Yeah, but it's important if you want to grow.
Okay.
So like what could an assistant do?
Yeah. What would they do?
They could prep materials,
Okay.
manage your inventory, or even handle some basic designs
Okay.
so that you can focus on more complicated stuff.
So it's all about delegating.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And building a team that can support your vision.
Okay. So I see how all these pieces are starting to fit together. You start with understanding your costs, then you price your work strategically, then you get systems in place and people to help you to grow your reach.
Exactly. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And it requires artistic talent, business skills, and a willingness to learn.
This has been really interesting so far. Like we've talked about, from like actually calculating your costs to scaling your business.
Yeah.
But I still kind of want to learn more about that clean cheese strategy.
Okay.
Like, why does that seem so important if you're trying to make a profit?
That's a good point. Let's dig into that next.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we were talking about the clean cheese strategy,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about something one of the artists mentioned about like the psychology of pricing.
Oh.
Like, it's so interesting how like subtle things can make people think something's worth more or less.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Like I remember reading somewhere that people are way more likely to buy a t-shirt if it's $29.99 than $30,
Yeah.
even though it's only a penny difference.
It's crazy, right?
It's wild.
There's like a whole field of behavioral economics.
Wow. Can you give me some more examples of that?
Yeah, sure.
I'm really curious now.
Okay, so there's one called anchoring.
Anchoring.
Yeah, where you like show a more expensive option first,
Okay.
and then everything else seems like a better deal.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Like if a coffee shop has a small McPumic man for $3, a medium for $4, and a large for $4.50.
Right.
Suddenly the large seems like a steal, even though it's still kind of pricey.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And these like little tricks can be really helpful for artists, who are selling in person.
Oh, yeah, like at a fair or a market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about the art itself.
No.
It's how you're presenting it
Yeah.
to the customer.
It's all about the presentation.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about costs,
Uh-huh.
perceived value,
Yeah.
even the psychology of pricing.
Yeah.
But what about competition?
Oh, yeah.
How do you figure out your prices when there are other artists out there doing similar stuff?
That's a really important thing to consider,
Yeah.
especially if you're in a local market
Yeah.
where you might have, a few competitors.
Yeah, because I imagine it can be tough to find that sweet spot.
It is.
where you're competitive, but you're not like selling yourself short.
It's a tough balance.
Yeah, and especially
Yeah.
when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if I undercut everyone,
Right.
then I'll get a lot of business, but then you might get stuck there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to get in that race to the bottom
Right.
where you're just constantly lowering your prices.
Yeah. And then it seems like your work isn't as valuable.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you recommend artists approach pricing
Well,
when they're in a competitive market?
okay. So one thing you could do is specialize.
Specialize.
Yeah. Like if you're really good at portraits, you could focus on that.
Okay.
And then you're not competing with everyone else.
Right.
You're like the portrait artist.
You've carved out your niche.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another strategy is to offer like premium pricing
Okay.
for like special skills.
Okay.
Like if you're really good at a certain technique,
Right.
or you can do something that other people can't.
Okay.
And you can charge more.
So you're showing what makes you different
Exactly.
and better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And probably the most important thing is to build a strong brand.
A brand.
Yeah.
So like a logo, a website.
All of that. Yeah. Your logo, your website, how you talk to clients, how you present your work.
So if you have a strong brand, you can stand out and you can charge more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between a generic soda and a name brand.
Right. People will pay more for the one they recognize.
Yeah, exactly.
And that they trust.
Yep.
Okay.
And building a brand takes time,
Uh-huh.
but it's important in the long run.
Okay.
Yeah.
This reminds me of something one of the artists said.
Oh, yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to fire your clients.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
It's about setting boundaries,
Yeah.
knowing that not everyone's a good fit.
You got it.
Yeah. And that could be tough for artists who
Well.
are just starting out.
Yeah. You just want to take any work you can get.
Right. But in the long run, it's better to find clients who actually value what you do.
Yes. You want clients who are going to pay what you're worth.
Otherwise, you're just constantly haggling
Yeah.
and you get burnt out.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's about knowing your worth,
Yeah.
finding the right clients.
Yeah.
Okay, this brings us back to valuing your time,
Yes.
which is something that we saw over and over again.
It's so important,
Yeah.
especially when you're self-employed.
Yeah. It's easy to forget that time is money
It is.
when you're doing what you love.
Yeah.
Remember one artist said they used to spend hours and hours on these really detailed pieces.
Oh, wow.
And they realized they weren't making enough to justify all that time.
That's a common trap.
Yeah, we get so focused on making it perfect.
Yeah.
We forget about the bigger picture.
Right. The business side of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're running a business.
Right.
We got to think about our time and our resources.
So it's about that balance again,
Yes.
right?
The art and the business.
Okay. And that's where systems and processes come in.
Yeah.
Remember that artist who was talking about streamlining their workflow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they had all these little hacks like pre-cutting stencils and grouping similar designs together.
Oh, yeah. Those little things can make a big difference.
They can.
Yeah. For your efficiency and your profit.
Yeah, I love that idea of grouping similar designs together.
Yeah.
It's like you're making an assembly line for your art.
It kind of is.
Yeah, it's being smart.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important to be organized,
It is.
especially as your business grows.
Yeah. You need systems for everything.
Right. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
Yeah. You're just putting out fires all the time.
And you burn out.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's working smarter, not harder.
You got it.
So, okay, based on everything we've learned,
Yeah.
what would you say is like the biggest mistake that new artists make
Oh, that's a good question.
when it comes to pricing?
I think a lot of artists undervalue their work.
Really?
Yeah, they either focus too much on their costs and they forget about their time and their skills,
Oh, yeah.
or they get scared of the competition and set their prices too low.
So they're afraid to ask for what they're worth.
Yeah, and that can hurt their business in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to remember that pricing isn't just about covering your expenses.
Right.
It's about showing the value you bring.
It's about confidence.
Exactly. You have to believe in yourself
Yeah.
and your work.
This is making me think about how important it is to have a good support system,
Oh, yeah.
like a mentor or other artists or even just friends and family.
Yeah, it can be lonely,
It can.
especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah. So it's good to have people to talk to and to celebrate with.
Yeah, people who believe in you
Yes.
and remind you why you're doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's all about the passion
Uh,
and the joy of creating.
okay, so speaking of creating,
Yeah,
let's go back to that clean cheese strategy.
okay.
I'm still really interested in how that can help artists make more money.
Yeah, it's an important concept,
Yeah.
especially for retail.
So, okay, let's break down this clean cheese idea.
Yeah.
It's all about balancing speed and quality, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially for artists selling at like fairs and markets.
Right.
You know, in retail time is money.
Yeah. The more you can sell, the more you make.
Right.
But doesn't that mean you have to sacrifice quality if you're going for speed?
That's a good point.
Like I'm thinking about designs that are rushed, they don't have a lot of detail,
Right, right.
and they just kind of look generic.
Yeah, but that's where the clean cheese strategy gets interesting.
Okay.
It's not about just churning out cookie cutter designs. It's
Rob-
about finding that sweet spot.
So what does a clean cheese design look like?
Okay. So think about designs that are popular,
Okay.
things that people want,
Okay.
but they don't take hours and hours to make.
Okay.
So a simple graphic, like a
Wow.
silhouette of an animal,
Okay.
or like a name in a cool font,
Gotcha.
stuff like that.
So you're still using your artistic skills,
Yeah.
but you're making things that are quick and easy to reproduce.
Right. It's about efficiency.
Yeah.
One artist said it's like offering a value menu for your art.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so people get a cool custom item at a good price,
Uh-huh.
and you can make more money.
I get it. It makes sense, especially if you're doing a lot of events.
Yeah, you got to keep that inventory moving.
Right. It's like finding a recipe that's both easy and delicious.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And just like a recipe, the key is in the execution.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know what you're good at,
Right.
what people want, and how to work quickly without sacrificing quality.
Man, this is making me realize there's so much more to airbrushing than I thought.
Yeah, it's more than just the technical skill.
Yeah.
You got to understand your customers and the market.
Like you're part artist, part entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So we've talked about costs.
Yeah.
We've talked about marketing competition,
Mhm.
scaling your business, even the psychology of pricing.
Yeah.
But what about the emotional side of it all?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Like how do you put a price tag on something that
Yeah,
you put your heart and soul into?
that's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah, for a lot of artists.
Yeah. It can feel weird like you're selling out.
Right. You're turning your passion into a product.
Exactly. And especially if you're new to this whole thing,
Yeah.
you might feel like you're not a real artist.
You get that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, like who am I to charge for this?
Yeah.
So how do you get over that?
Okay, so one way is to think of pricing as a way to honor your work.
Right.
Like you're respecting your time and your skills.
So it's not about the money.
It's about valuing yourself.
I like that.
Yeah, you're an artist and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, one of the artists talked about how when she started charging what she was worth, she actually had more time to make art.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because she wasn't stressing about money all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like a positive feedback loop.
It is.
The more you value yourself, the more opportunities come your way.
Exactly. You got to break free from that starving artist mentality.
Yeah, you're a creative entrepreneur.
Yeah, you own it.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah,
It's like a total mindset shift.
it is.
Yeah, but like we've been saying all along, you can't separate the art from the business.
Right. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And when you find that balance,
Mhm.
that's where the magic happens.
This has been amazing.
Yeah.
We've learned so much
We have.
from the tiniest details to these big picture ideas.
It's quite a journey.
It has. And I feel like I understand airbrush artists so much better now.
Yeah, me too.
It's so much more than just painting.
It is. It's art and it's business.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious,
Yeah.
what's one last thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Try different pricing models,
Uh-huh.
different ways of marketing,
Sure.
talk to other artists,
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Because that's how we learn.
Exactly. You got to try things out to see what works
Yeah.
and what doesn't.
And that's how you figure out what makes your art and your business special.
You got it.
This has been so insightful.
It
I
has.
feel like we've given our listeners a lot to think about,
I hope so.
whether they're just starting out
Yeah.
or they've been doing this for years.
I hope they feel inspired.
Me too.
It
So remember, being an artist is a journey.
is.
It's constantly changing.
You never stop learning.
So embrace the challenges,
Yeah.
celebrate your successes,
Yes.
and never stop creating.
Beautifully said.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of airbrush artist pricing.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone,
And keep creating.
and keep diving deep.